one, go.
Greetings. This is Alan Lewis, Dean of the School of Health Professions here at SUNY Downstate Health Sciences University, and welcome to our 8th lecture in the School of Health Professions Dean's Lecture Series on Culture. Today, our topic is Strategies to Promote Cultural Pluralism. Before we get started, let me remind you that we are in fact recording each of these lectures, and we will have done 9 at the end of next month. And if there is a lecture that you want to see, please contact my assistant, Franshawn Jackson. And we are also trying to evaluate them so that we can learn our lessons about what worked and which things we need to improve on going forward. So today, again, this is lecture number 8 of a 9-lecture series. And our topic is Strategies to Promote Cultural Pluralism. Pluralism is a concept that speaks to living in a society where there are multiple perspectives and points of view, and all are valid. For example, US society, at least in theory. We've not still in 2021 fully actualized pluralism in this country. This is an obvious point. One merely needs to consume the national news for a few days to see clear evidence of this. Cultural pluralism is a concept where all groups participate fully in society while maintaining their cultural uniqueness. So it's very much similar to the concept of acculturation that we talked about at a previous lecture. In order to achieve general pluralism and specifically cultural pluralism in this nation, it will require a lot more effort, particularly in terms of enhanced awareness, sensitivity, and valuing of the unique perspectives inherent in United States society, and truly seeing that those multitude of differences as an asset. We've seen historically in this country, and especially with the previous presidential administration, the struggles that segments of our American populace are still having with this notion of cultural pluralism. To begin to move us in the direction of positive change, where we reach a point of improved pluralism, and specifically cultural pluralism in this nation, I am suggesting a set of personal, micro-level strategies that if persons commit to them on an individual basis, there can begin to be an erosion of the forces that still, unfortunately, prevent us from fully manifesting cultural pluralism. Such forces are white supremacy and racism. Personal change, if pervasive and sustained over adequate time, can lead to group level change. And that's what we're looking for in order to have cultural pluralism be more widespread and pervasive in our nation. We know that personal change requires several steps to really be effective. It's a pretty comprehensive process that involves, first, improve general awareness and knowledge. That's the very first step. The second step is understanding of how that awareness and knowledge relates to one personally. The third step is motivation, which includes the reasons and conditions for change. A person can understand and can know something, but really not want to change it. So that the motivational piece has to be there. And then we have to, in addition to motivation, give people a way to behave differently, to take some different actions, which includes typically new skills, which have to be learned. And then the social context must support the new behavior. That's a pretty tall order, those 5 steps in the personal change process. And I don't know that we can necessarily expect that to happen in terms of cultural pluralism in this country. So therefore, I'm going to focus primarily on strategies that will increase awareness. And I'm suggesting a 4-step process for doing that. That is 4 strategies for enhancing personal awareness to improve the level of cultural pluralism in our United States society. Strategy number 1. We all need greater awareness of our own culture. Each person in America must realize our own cultural identity, and we should realize that we are in fact a cultural being. Plus, we need to also realize that we not only have one cultural identity, most of us have multiple cultural identities, which means each one of us has not just one worldview, one set of values, one assumptions, or one way of doing things. We have that for several different identities that comprise each one of us. For example, most of us have a different identity culturally as it relates to different domains and spheres of our lives. For example, we have a cultural identity that relates to our careers. If you're a midwife, your cultural identity is different from a medical informaticist. We also have a cultural identity that relates to our spiritual life, if we are so inclined. There are many different spiritual orientations and they're not all the same. Each of us has our own unique cultural identity in terms of race, ethnicity, and nationality, and they're not all the same. The values, the ways of doing things, the worldview, and the assumptions are different. Also politically, if you're so inclined to have a political identity, have a party affiliation, or have a certain ideology politically, that's different across different people. So the idea is that even though each one of us is different culturally, we're different culturally in a multidimensional kind of way because every one of us has multiple cultural identities. So we have to first and foremost realize that as this first strategy, that each one of us is cultural, has a unique cultural identity, and that's not just one identity, it's multiple identities in our various life spaces. Strategy number 2, I'm suggesting that we engage in what I call bicultural awareness. And what that means is selecting another culture beyond your own race, ethnicity, and nationality to learn about. Focus on learning about it in depth for a day, a week, or a month. I will say that I launched this strategy almost 40 years ago as a college undergraduate student and president of the Black Student Alliance at the University of Virginia. Back then, we had a bicultural awareness day. And the idea was every student on campus was supposed to, during this day, select another racial, ethnic, or nationality group to learn about. And what it did was it allowed us to have an appreciation for somebody other than our own culture, for a culture other than our own. And it made the idea of appreciating other cultures more manageable. Because if you think about it in an overwhelming sense, there are lots of cultures to learn about. So this allowed people to have just one other culture they learned about at a time. So they proceeded in a learning process that was a very stepwise, manageable, palatable, non-overwhelming kind of approach. Strategy 3, we each need to acknowledge the rich multicultural aspect of American society by committing to learning something new about at least 3 other dimensions of culture. So I'm not in this particular strategy suggesting we learn about a particular culture. I'm suggesting we learn about 3 dimensions of culture. What I mean by dimensions, I mean learn about what it means to have a spiritual culture orientation. Learn about what it means to have a specific gender identity. Learn about what it means to have a specific sexual orientation. Learn about what it means to have a particular political affiliation. Learn about what it means to have a particular race, ethnicity, or disability identity. So on this third step, unlike the second step where you actually learn the details of another culture beyond yours, this third step, you're just learning generally about the cultural dimensions. You're picking 3 dimensions to learn generally about those. And then the fourth step is to engage in the How Diverse is Your World exercise to improve awareness of how culturally diverse your own lifestyle is. With this particular exercise, which we'll get to in a few minutes, it's a self-assessment process that allows you to look at your own life and the decisions you make about who you affiliate with in your own life to understand just how diverse of a lifestyle one actually leads. Once you finish that exercise, I think the idea would be to then use that as a baseline and then determine some personal goals on how much you want your own life to be enhanced by cultural pluralism based on that baseline view from having administered that instrument called How Diverse is Your World. And then you're going to begin a process where you routinely ask people that you work with in a professional context what their cultural identity is, particularly if you're a healthcare provider. You want to be clear about understanding the cultural identity of all the service recipients you provide services to, because we know that as you provide services to folks, the more you know about their cultural identity, that is your clients, the more likely you are to be able to put together a plan that will be viewed as being culturally competent because you understand their assumptions, their worldview, the things that they are in the perspective they're operating from as a person in their life. And you can tailor your plan of action in terms of helping them with their healthcare challenge in a way that suits and aligns with that. And then thirdly, you're going to develop a plan based on the results of the How Diverse is Your World exercise that would help you monitor your personal progress going forward and becoming more supportive and more inclined to be culturally pluralistic in how you approach the world. Culturally pluralistic in how you approach the world. Keep in mind that while I'm proposing the 4 specific micro level or individual strategies to improve cultural pluralism that I spoke about a few minutes ago, I think it really does not matter which strategies you embrace and use to improve your cultural pluralism, sensitivity, and understanding, as long as you have some strategies. The idea here is to zero in on enhancing cultural pluralism by whatever strategies that seem appropriate to you. You can use the four I just talked about, or you may have your own set. The idea is to take some action to move yourself forward in a direction of ensuring that you become more understanding of and more supportive of cultural pluralism in the United States culture. Some action is far better than no action, so you can devise your own set of strategies. Before we look at the How Diverse is Your World tool, I will offer one thought about a macro level strategy to improve cultural pluralism in America. And that strategy is not new. This is a strategy that we already use for the Black community. This strategy is Black History Month. So what I think we could do much more of as a national society is to begin to identify other cultures beyond African American history or Black culture that we begin to hold up and recognize and acknowledge for a week or a month throughout the course of a calendar year. If we do much more of that, then the United States population will at least have the opportunity to be exposed to information that speaks to what these various cultural groups, what their lifestyles are, what their contributions are, what their worldview is, and that begins to offer an opportunity for more appreciation and understanding of the cultural diversity in our midst here in the United States culture. We're doing it right now for Black History Month, and we need to do a lot more for some other groups, I think, and that will then become a broader context for a macro level intervention that might be helpful to us. Okay, now let's switch over to looking at that tool, How Diverse is Your World? And with that, I'm going to have to share my screen. So if you give me a second, I will do that. Okay, hopefully everybody can see the screen. It's a one-page document, it's a PDF, and it's called How Diverse is Your World? And you see I've got a footnote at the top and that draws you right to the bottom of the instrument that says, this exercise is taken from the book, We Are All Racist, The Truth About Cultural Bias by yours truly, 2014. So a little background about this. So this instrument is actually developed on the heels of an instrument or on the work that a colleague of mine from many, many years ago actually put together. She was the chief diversity officer at the University of Virginia. And she had put together a similar instrument. And I looked at what she did and I sort of built an instrument based on what she had done, but made it more specific to my purpose. So she was really the original thinker of this type of way of evaluating people. So the instrument is called How Diverse is Your World? And what it does is it allows me to pose 10 questions. And then if people can answer these questions honestly, as candidly and honestly as possible, you will not be sharing your results, but be very honest with yourself. It will give you a sense about, I think, how diverse your current lifestyle is. Now, this instrument has not been validated and tested for reliability, so it's not psychometrically sound. It is just a quick, at a glance perspective on really how diverse your particular world is. So let's go through it so you understand exactly what it's asking. So for each question, start at the top. For each question below, please answer honestly by indicating a primary diversity description for each response. That is, indicate the predominant or numerical majority of the race or ethnicity that fits your answer. So again, put in the predominant racial ethnicity that fits the majority of people that you interact with as per the answer for each question. Keeping in mind, no one will see this, so you can be as honest as you possibly can. So the first question says, who are you married to or who do you date mostly? So if you have never been married, but you do date, you can put in the race or ethnicity that aligns with the majority of people that you have dated. In my case, I'm married and I was married previously. So if I were to answer question 1, I would put in Black because I've been married twice, married currently and married previously, and both times to a Black female. So you see how you answer the question. So in my case, both times the person was Black. So that's the predominant or the numerical majority of the race or ethnicity that fits my answer. Number 2, who are your best friends? For this question, you got to think about who your best friends are, and then think about what their race and ethnicity is, and think about what the numerical majority of race and ethnicity is across that cohort of friends, and write that in there, Black, white, or whatever it may be. Number 3, who are you likely to invite to your home for dinner or on a holiday? Again, Think about that person or persons and write it down the predominant or the majority description in terms of race and ethnicity that applies. Number 4, who do you socialize with on a regular basis? Same thing. Number 5, who do you worship with? If you worship. If you don't worship, then don't answer it. Who are you likely to eat lunch with on a regular basis at work or school? Again, writing in the predominant, the majority, race and ethnicity of the person or persons who fit that answer. Number 7, if your family took a vacation with another family, how would you describe the other family? Number 8, who is the ideal person for your son or daughter to marry? If you don't have children, answer as if you did, hypothetically speaking. Number 9, describe who you are least likely to fear in the dark alley. Again, write in the race or ethnicity that fits who you least likely to fear in the dark alley. And number 10, if you had to sit with a group of complete strangers while dining in a restaurant, describe the group with whom you would be most comfortable sitting. You're going to write in there the race and ethnicity that would apply to the majority of people in that group that would give you great comfort to dine with. So the bottom allows you to compile. It says, notice the diversity themes related to race or ethnicity that are pervasive in your answers to the 10 questions above, or however many questions you answered. If you didn't answer a question for whatever reason, just based on the ones you did answer. If your descriptions in a majority of questions, or at least 6 questions, assuming you answered 10, match, if those answers, the majority answer in those, and at least 6 questions of the 10, matches who you are in terms of race or ethnicity, then your world is not very diverse, even though you live in a very pluralistic society. If your descriptions or the answers in the majority of questions do not match who you are in terms of race or ethnicity, then your world is pretty diverse. For those of you with a pretty diverse world, you probably have less cultural bias in terms of race and ethnicity, although you are not entirely devoid of cultural bias, because all people have it. So what I would encourage you to do is at some time at your leisure, sit down with these 10 questions, go through them, answer them as per the directions in this instrument, do your tally at the end, and decide whether or not you believe your world is diverse in terms of cultural diversity, or not as diverse in terms of cultural diversity as you want it to be, relative to where you want to be. So I just decided to put this instrument together based on the instrument of a colleague of mine from the University of Virginia, as I mentioned earlier, years ago, because over the years, I've asked many college students and many graduate students, do you live a diverse lifestyle? And invariably, they'd all say yes, because of the fact that we live in the United States, and in the United States society, there are, in fact, a lot of different cultural groups. There's a lot of different diversity of culture in the United States country. But that doesn't mean, just because it's here, doesn't mean that you avail yourself of the diversity in your own life space. So these questions are designed to determine who you affiliate with in those areas of your life where you control who you affiliate with. In many cases in our lives, we affiliate with people that we don't have control over whether they're there or not. If you're in school and you're in a class, you don't have any control over the classmates that you have and what their diversity is in terms of culture. In a work setting, you don't have any control over the cultural diversity that is implicit in the people that are your coworkers. They are just people who are there, and you just found yourself in that work context. These questions get at situations where you have total control over who you are interacting with, primarily on an interpersonal basis. And it's these kinds of questions that really determine whether you're making conscious or subconscious decisions to stay in your comfort zone, meaning affiliate with people who are just like you culturally, or to step outside of your comfort zone to affiliate with folks who are different from you culturally in terms of race and ethnicity. So either way, however it comes out, there's no indictment. It's just a baseline for your own use to understand then what you want to do next. And as I said early on, we're going to go back to those 3 things that I just mentioned. You want to use the baseline results from this how diverse is your world activity to then determine some personal goals on how much you want your own life to be enhanced by cultural pluralism. So if you like what you see in the results of these 10 questions, you may not want to change much, but if you want to change, this becomes a baseline, and you can set yourself some goals going forward on what the change is you want to see happen. Again, you're going to begin to routinely ask people that you work with, particularly if you're providing services, a healthcare provider, what their cultural identity is, because you want to know that to help provide more effective services to them. And then finally, you're going to develop a plan and monitor your own personal progress towards becoming more supportive of cultural pluralism going forward, based on the results of this particular How Diverse Is Your World quick activity. So with that, I think we are done with the first 30 minutes, although it did take us but about maybe 19 or 20 minutes. And then I'll see you on the other side. We'll have a conversation about this. Thank you very much.